Welcome to this first ecosystem talk where we will focus on self-sovereign identity. My name is Felix from Technische University of Munich, and I'll hold this talk together with Hadi Adineh from the Automotive Solution Center for Simulation. To give you a quick overview, what we're going to talk about, we're going to start out looking at what we develop and why. We are going to look at steps for onboarding a company, issuing credentials, receiving credentials, and a bit more of a big picture look into our current and future developments. All right, so let's start out with why do we even need SSI? Of course, we need to identify actors in general in the data space. That could be an employee of a company accessing a marketplace listing or authenticating with a marketplace to actually make a purchase. That could also be a machine identifying itself, for example, for an automated data upload, or it could be EDC nodes authenticating to each other for a data transfer. So what I've brought with me here is a version of the classic SSI trust triangle. On the left, we have the issuer, which in our case is our GX credentials application, which is a simple web application that I'm going to talk about a bit more on the next slide. And we use this to issue credentials to companies and employees that can use a smartphone wallet to receive and hold these credentials, and of course then also to present these credentials to any verifier to, for example, log into a marketplace. Doing all that, we also log some data on a smart contract, which currently is on the Tezos blockchain. That allows us to have issuance logs for transparency's sake and also revocation for credentials. So let's talk about this GX credentials artifact we developed. Our main goal for it was, and still is, to provide employee identification for a GaiaX data space. And this identification solution should be as simple as possible while also being fully SSI compliant. So we settled on one single web service that can be run by anyone who wants to become a trust anchor for their data space. That could be multiple, for example, and anyone in the data space can, of course, decide who to exactly trust here. The data space services can then depend on these credentials for logins, for example. We documented and open sourced this project in July, and you can find it on our project's GitHub. Anyone familiar with the GaiaX ecosystem overall will, of course, be familiar with the cross-federation services, XFSC, formerly known as GaiaX Federation Services, GXFS. And you might wonder why we do not fully use those services. There's a couple of reasons, but the main two reasons come down to it still, unfortunately, being difficult to approach. And also that, of course, as a research project, we need some ability to make and challenge design decisions for ourselves. This can come down to very minor things, such as adopting the EU's preferred credential format called JWT VC. And of course, we also aim to make our version of this identity provisioner as lightweight and easy to set up as possible, because we want it to also be a viable solution for very small companies that doesn't require hosting a OCM, for example, that can also ensure that key material is actually with the person that is represented by that key. So the key never leaves wallet software and never leaves a smartphone. And the web service we provide only orchestrates these asynchronous process steps. And of course, ultimately, GaiaX is a standard and not just some specific software. So we hope also that by building this alternative identity management solution, we can demonstrate that there is actually this interoperability that is at the core of the GaiaX idea. And with that, let's talk a bit about the actual processes that we cover, which starts with onboarding. Before we talk about onboarding itself, we need to look at the potentially most fundamental software on the user side, which is, of course, the wallet. We know wallets right now fairly well already from crypto. So there are Bitcoin wallets, Ethereum wallets, and so on. But of course, those wallets only support key material and cryptographic transactions with the respective blockchain. And for self-sovereign identity, we also need support for verifiable credentials, for their storage, for their transmission. So we need protocol support. And all of that is still somewhat rare, somewhat in its infancy. But there are a couple of standout projects, and the one we found was Altme Wallet, which is fully free and open source. It has its roots in the Tezos blockchain community. And what makes it such a standout project is that it has very wide-ranging support. It has support for several different blockchains, their accounts and transactioning with those blockchains. But it also has full support for several SSI standards, which are different credential encodings, for example. And all of that in one app that is already distributed on all big app stores, which is really, really nice. The big advantage of using this is, of course, the existing very active developer community behind this wallet. These are not just people who are very invested in Gaia X specifically, they are invested in the whole decentralized ecosystem, from blockchain in general for decentralized finance up to self-sovereign identity. This gives us the space to concentrate on the Gaia X specific services and software components, and ensures that we build something that is, let's say, real world compatible and not just works with one single wallet app that we might also have to develop ourselves. So for onboarding companies, a company can apply for a participant credential with a trust anchor by essentially sending somewhat of a self-description, and the trust anchor will validate that out of band and issue a Gaia X participant credential. Then the companies have full control over, of course, their key material the entire time, and thus also full control over issuing employee credentials. Our software gives them an interface for that, but all of the key material is always on the company devices. So a company could, as well, if they have the resources for it, run their own version of this software or run and develop a completely different software to provision employee credentials. So now let's register for a company credential, so a participant credential, to show how this works in practice. For the sake of this demo, I'm creating my little company Felix Limited, and I've already downloaded the wallet app Altme here and set up a couple of quick user profiles. So I generated key material. This is just possible with 2 simple clicks. I also now visited the GX Credentials webpage, and if I click on login here, I get a choice of different wallets I could use, and I of course want to use Altme here. Clicking that gives me this QR code, and if I scan the QR code, I should be connected. And now, choosing my Felix Limited account, I click connect, and next up I sign a quick login message to prove my actual key ownership via signature. It takes us a second, and then I am logged in, and the system of course doesn't know me yet. So I have the decision here between applying as a company or applying as an employee to an existing company, and I want to apply as a company. So now I fill in this form. I am Felix Limited. I have a registration number of, let's say, 42. And I am a new automotive supplier. My key, my public key hash, is already filled in for me, so we can't make any mistakes here. And I click apply, and with that, I'm already done. So now I can log out and wait for the trust anchor to approve me.
Automotive Solutions Center for Simulation is a non-profit association in the field of automotive simulation. Environment for Virtual Test Drive, or Invited, is a subgroup of ASCS. Invited Market is a marketplace for selling and buying simulation-related data and assets. To improve the trust that each company and person who want to sell or buy something inside this marketplace should have a digital identity. And this digital identity must be approved by the ASCS. So in this case, you can see the role of the ASCS as a trust anchor among the marketplace or this ecosystem. In this presentation, we are talking about the technical issues and how we solve them to approve the digital identities. But for sure, there are some non-technical issues which is out of the scope of this presentation. Now it's time to talk about the trust anchor, why we need such a concept even if we are working in a decentralized world. In decentralized world, there should be multiple persons or companies. They have just like an ID, and you don't know more than string of characters about them. So in this case, there should be some institute like ASTS who can trust onboarding members, and then after that, those trusted persons or companies can go into the ecosystem like GaiaX, like the ASCS, and so on. Now is the time for ASCS member to have a look on the applications. Here I want to log in, and then I will choose for sure the Alt Me, and now I scan the code and do the connect as ASCS admin, and then sign. So I'm waiting here. It's working. Yep, there is an application from Felix Ltd. We here just have the public hash, but as I mentioned, there's a big way to officially find if the applicant trustable or not. But now we just trust on it and consider that we did those steps. No, I want to accept the application, and here I should sign it. And wait a moment. And send. Awaiting confirmation. And sign successfully submitted. And yeah, congratulations. Details of the issuance could be seen here. First of all, the generated verifiable credential payload should be signed. And after that, the transaction should be signed to log the credential hash into the Tezos blockchain. The third one is the signed verifiable credential should be stored on the Trust Anchor database to be used later. And now we have credential hash and a timestamp.
So now it's me again, and the Trust Anchor had hopefully enough time to approve my request. So let's just log back in and see what happened. Choosing Alt Me again, logging in with the QR code. I'm Felix Limited, I'm signing my login proof, and it takes me to an overview page, hopefully. Okay, here I can see that indeed my request was granted. My credential is waiting for me to be collected, and I could now do a simple raw download of the JSON file, but I prefer to directly ingest it into my wallet via the beacon protocol. So I will click this button, and now I get an automatic request on the wallet that is connected. I sign this request, I trust the host, and now the credential exchange should begin. I get a GX participant credential offered. I want to add that. I need to also provide, of course, authentication here for this takeout endpoint. I'm choosing my account ownership credential to do that. And now I'm sending this presentation there, and I get back my new credential. Yeah, and here it already is, GaiaX participant for Felix Limited. I can see some more basic information here on the credential, and I can now, of course, use this credential with other services. Now that you've seen our prototype software, let's talk a bit about what we are already working on in the background and what is to come. Providing simple means to issue credentials is, of course, only the first big part. The other is to provide tools and easy means to integrate logins and authentication and authorization in general based on these credentials into web services anywhere in the data ecosystem. For that, we are committed to use and leverage existing big standards like OpenID. OpenID has the OpenID for verifiable credentials substandard, and leveraging that, we can then ultimately, for example, arrive at a keycloak, which is a fairly industry standard. This is more or less exactly what the Cross-Federation Service, AAS, Authentication and Authorization Service, is already providing. So we are right now tinkering with hopefully adapting this service so we can have a easy bridge into the rest of the Gaia-X ecosystem. And now that we, of course, also validated our tech stack, our technical feasibility and usability overall, we, of course, need to now take a turn again and work mainly on Gaia-X compliance. So we want to fine-tune our processes and our data formats to be fully compatible. But we also want to provide some innovations here. We want to look into the support for JWT VC, and we have already started with that. That is, for decent reasons, the preferred format of the European Union. We also, while doing that, want to look into directly supporting selective disclosure via SDJWT. And we are also in the process of exploring some better designs for revocation and trusted issuer storage. And of course, a lot more of small and minor improvements along the way. And with that, our talk comes to a close. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to your questions later on.